The rain started long before the order came. It crept in quietly, slipping through the forest canopy in thin, whispering streams, soaking the ground before anyone noticed. By the time the troops assembled at the forest's edge, the rain had found its strength. It fell straight and heavy, drumming against helmets, darkening uniforms, turning the earth into a breathing, shifting thing beneath their boots. Captain Amina Kade stood ahead of them, motionless. She did not pace. She did not speak. She simply watched the trees. The forest stretched out before them like a living wall. Tall trunks packed tight, vines hanging like veins, leaves shuddering under the weight of water. Mist coiled low along the ground, blurring the boundary between earth and air. Somewhere deep inside, thunder rolled, slow and distant, like a warning that had not yet decided to speak loudly. Amina adjusted the strap of her helmet and felt the familiar weight settle against her skull. The rain slid down her face, tracing lines she did not bother to wipe away. She had learned long ago that war did not wait for comfort. Behind her, the unit stood in loose formation. 42 soldiers. Each one armed. Each one tired before the march had even begun. Some stared into the forest as if expecting it to move. Others stared at her back. They had followed many captains into danger before. But this was the first time they would follow her. The doubt was quiet, but it was there. It lived in small glances, in tightened jaws, in the way hands checked weapons one extra time. No one said it out loud. Soldiers rarely did. But Amina had felt it since the moment she was assigned command. Not everyone believed she belonged at the front of a war unit. She ignored it. The radio crackled at her shoulder. Static first. Then a voice, distant and strained. Captain Kade. Orders confirmed. Enemy movement reported beyond the northern ridge. Your unit is to advance through the forest and secure the crossing before nightfall. Amina pressed the transmit button once. Understood. The radio fell silent again, swallowed by rain. She took a slow breath and turned to face her troops. The rain seemed louder now, as if the forest leaned in to listen. Listen carefully, she said. Her voice was calm. Not loud. Not forced. It carried because it didn't compete with the storm, it moved through it. This forest is not neutral. It will slow us, hide us, and betray us all at once. The rain will drown sound, erase tracks, and wear you down faster than the enemy ever could. A few heads lifted. More eyes locked onto her now. We do not rush. We do not break formation. And we do not panic, no matter what the storm throws at us. Thunder growled closer this time. Amina paused, letting the moment settle. We move together, she continued, and we come out together. She raised her hand. The signal passed down the line instantly. They stepped forward. The forest closed around them almost immediately. Branches scraped against armor. Wet leaves slapped against shoulders and helmets. The smell of damp soil and crushed greenery filled the air, thick and heavy. The light dimmed as the canopy swallowed the sky, turning day into something closer to dusk. Within minutes, boots were sinking ankle-deep into mud. Every step became an effort. Water pooled in low places, hiding roots and holes that reached out to twist ankles and steal balance. The rain did not ease. It fell harder. Amina moved at the front, eyes scanning constantly. She watched the slope of the ground, the bend of trees, the way water flowed downhill. She listened not just for sound, but for its absence. The forest was too quiet. That thought stayed with her. She slowed the unit with a subtle hand signal. The troops followed instantly, halting one by one, the line freezing in place like a single organism holding its breath. Amina closed her eyes for a second. Rain. What? Distant thunder. And beneath it all, something wrong. She opened her eyes and crouched, pressing 2 fingers into the mud. The water was moving faster here than it should. Not downhill. Sideways. Disturbed. Her gaze lifted slowly. Broken leaves. Bent grass. A snapped branch hanging low, fresh and wet. Someone had passed through recently. She signaled again, this time sharper. The unit shifted into alert formation without a word. Amina's heart did not race. It never did in moments like this. Fear was a tool, useful only if it didn't control you. She moved forward alone, slow and deliberate, counting her steps, watching the spaces between trees instead of the trees themselves. That was where danger lived. A faint metallic click reached her ears. So quiet it almost disappeared into the rain. She dropped instantly. The explosion ripped through the space where she had been standing less than a second earlier. Mud, water, and shattered wood blasted into the air. The shock wave slammed into her chest, knocking the breath from her lungs as the forest screamed around them. Down, someone shouted. Gunfire erupted from the left, Then the right, flashes of light tearing through the rain like brief, violent stars. The ambush had begun. Amina rolled onto her side, mud coating her face, ears ringing. She didn't think. She reacted. "Hold," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Do not charge." Bullets snapped through leaves overhead. Bark exploded from tree trunks. A soldier cried out in pain, then went silent. Amina crawled to cover behind a fallen log, rain washing blood from a shallow cut on her cheek. She raised her rifle, sighting through blurred optics, forcing her breathing to slow. The enemy was firing blind, using the storm for cover. So would she. "Second squad, flank right. Slow," she ordered. "Third squad, suppress, short bursts only." The line moved. Not in panic. Not in fear. But with discipline. Amina rose just enough to fire, her shots measured, controlled. Each recoil grounded her. Each breath reminded her she was still alive. The forest swallowed the sound of battle almost as quickly as it was made. Rain blurred everything. Smoke hung low, clinging to leaves. Minutes passed. Or seconds. In war, time lost its meaning. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the gunfire faded. The enemy withdrew, vanishing into the forest like ghosts. Amina stayed still long after the last shot echoed away. Only when she was certain did she lower her weapon. "Status," she said. Voices answered. One by one. "Injured but mobile. Ammo good. 2 wounded. Alive." Relief came quietly, without celebration. Amina rose to her feet, rain soaking her hair beneath the helmet. She looked at her troops, muddy, shaken, alive. They were watching her again. But this time the doubt was gone. She met their eyes and nodded once. "We keep moving," she said. The storm roared above them, heavier now, angrier. And deep within the forest, something waited. The rain did not loosen its grip. If anything, it grew heavier, as though the forest itself resented being challenged. Water streamed from leaves in thick sheets, striking helmets and shoulders with dull, relentless taps. The ground no longer felt solid. Every step sucked at boots, trying to pull them down, slow them, claim them. Captain Amina Kade moved at the front again. She had checked on the wounded herself. One had a bullet graze across the arm, another shrapnel lodged shallow in the thigh. Painful but not fatal. She ordered quick bandaging, no unnecessary movement, no wasted words. The rain would hide their trail soon enough. Now they advanced deeper. The forest changed as they moved. The trees grew thicker, older. Roots rose from the ground like ribs, slick and dangerous. Small streams formed where paths once existed, water rushing downhill with quiet urgency. The air smelled sharper here, wet bark, crushed leaves, and something metallic that never fully went away after gunfire. Amina kept her pace slow. Too slow for some. She felt it before she heard it, the subtle shift in energy behind her. Restlessness. Fatigue turning into impatience. She let it simmer for a moment, then raised her fist. The unit halted. Amina turned and walked back along the line, meeting faces one by one. Mud streaked their skin. Rain blurred their vision. Their breathing came heavier now. "This is where mistakes happen," she said quietly, not accusing, not soft. "When your body wants speed and your mind wants rest." No one spoke. The enemy knows this terrain. They're counting on us to rush. They're counting on frustration. She stopped near a young soldier whose hands trembled slightly on his rifle. "They're wrong," she said. Something shifted again. This time steadier. They moved on. The rain thickened into a curtain, turning distance into illusion. Shapes appeared and vanished between the trees. Shadows twisted, stretched, then snapped back into nothing. The forest whispered constantly, water dripping, branches creaking, leaves sliding against one another. It was impossible to tell which sounds mattered. That was when the ground gave way. The soldier at the rear never even shouted. One second he was there, the next he vanished with a splash and a sudden rush of water. The line jolted backward as if pulled by instinct alone. "Hold!" Amina snapped. She sprinted back, boots slipping, heart slamming hard now. A trench, old, half-hidden, had filled with rainwater until it looked like solid ground. Brown water churned violently inside it. A helmet bobbed to the surface, then disappeared again. Amina dropped to her knees, plunging her arms into the freezing water without hesitation. Her fingers found fabric, then flesh. She braced herself against the mud and pulled with everything she had. The soldier burst out coughing, gasping, panic wide in his eyes. Water poured from his uniform as Amina dragged him clear and pinned him gently but firmly to the ground. "Look at me," she said. His chest heaved. His eyes darted wildly. "Breathe," she commanded. With me. She inhaled slowly, exaggerated. Exhaled. Once. Twice. 3 times. His breathing steadied. The rain soaked them both as she released him and stood. No gaps, she said to the unit. Stay tight. They nodded, shaken but focused. The forest did not care about bravery. It only tested endurance. As the hours dragged on, exhaustion settled into their bones. Muscles ached. Fingers numbed around metal grips. Hunger gnawed quietly at the edges of thought. The rain turned from an obstacle into a presence. Always there, always pressing. Dusk crept in early beneath the canopy. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Amina slowed the unit again, lifting her hand. The light was fading fast now, the storm clouds thick and unbroken above. Moving blind would be suicide. She scanned the area and chose a rise of ground near a cluster of massive trees whose roots formed natural cover. With quick gestures, she ordered a temporary halt. No fires. No lights. They crouched in silence, backs against wet bark, rifles resting across knees. Rain ran down their faces unchecked. Someone coughed, muffled it quickly. Another whispered a prayer under his breath. Amina stayed standing. She walked the perimeter, checking positions, listening. Every sense strained outward. The forest felt closer now, heavier, like a lung drawing breath. Then she heard it. Not close. Not far. A low murmur. Voices. The enemy camp. Amina crouched and studied the slope ahead. Through the rain and mist, faint glimmers of movement flickered, shadows against shadows. They were tired too. Confident the storm had protected them. She returned to her unit. We strike at first light, she said softly. We rest in turns. Eyes open. No one argued. She took the first watch herself. Night fell fully, wrapping the forest in thick darkness. The rain softened slightly but never stopped. Mist rose from the ground, curling between trees like pale smoke. Every so often, thunder rolled far away, reminding them the storm had not finished speaking. Amina leaned against a tree, eyes fixed forward. For the first time since the march began, doubt brushed against her thoughts, not about the mission but about the cost. Every face behind her carried trust now. Trust was heavier than rank, heavier than weapons. She failed, they would pay. She pushed the thought away. The forest shifted again. A branch snapped. Amina raised her hands slowly. The unit froze. Shapes moved at the edge of sight. Too careful to be animals. Too deliberate. The enemy was circling. Amina's pulse steadied. Her voice dropped to a whisper carried hand to hand through signals. They're testing us, she mouthed. Let them. The rain masked their stillness. The darkness swallowed their shapes. Minutes stretched thin. Then the movement faded. The enemy withdrew once more, unsure. Amina did not relax. She knew better. The storm had only begun to decide whose side it was on. Sleep never truly came. It hovered just out of reach, broken by the constant hiss of rain and the ache of muscles that refused to relax. The soldiers rested in short turns, eyes closing for minutes at a time before snapping open again, unsure whether the sound that stirred them was real or imagined. Captain Amina Kade did not sleep at all. She stood through the night, shifting her weight only when her legs threatened to lock. Water soaked into her uniform until it felt like a second skin. Her hands were numb, but her mind stayed sharp, running through terrain, numbers, options. When the sky finally began to pale, it did so reluctantly. Dawn in the forest was not light, it was a thinning of darkness. The rain eased just enough for sound to travel again, and that made the silence more dangerous, not less. Mist clung to the ground, drifting between trees, turning distance into guesswork. Amina signaled the unit awake. No words. No wasted movement. They rose stiffly, rolling shoulders, tightening straps, checking weapons by feel. Hunger sat heavy now, but there was no time for food. Ahead, the enemy camp lay somewhere beyond the mist. Amina moved forward on her knees, scanning the forest floor. Fresh footprints, partially filled with water. Recently moved equipment. The enemy had not stayed still. She felt a flicker of unease. They were being herded. She raised 2 fingers, then swept her hand wide. The unit spread out, careful, quiet. That was when the first shot came. Not loud. Not close. A single crack, sharp and precise. A soldier on the left went down instantly, his body folding as if the strings had been cut. He didn't scream. He didn't move. The forest seemed to inhale. Sniper, someone whispered. Amina dropped flat, mud splashing into her mouth. She forced herself to breathe through her nose, slow and controlled. Panic would spread faster than bullets if she let it. Stay down, she signaled. Find angles. Another shot rang out. Bark exploded inches from Amina's head. She rolled, heart pounding now, adrenaline flooding her veins. The enemy was elevated, hidden, using the thinning mist like a veil. Amina crawled toward a fallen tree and pressed herself against it, peering through gaps in the wood. She spotted the faintest movement, a shadow shifting against the rain-darkened trunk of a tree uphill. There. She marked it in her mind. She signaled 2 soldiers, pointing, then counting down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Gunfire erupted together. The sniper vanished in a burst of splintered bark and motion. Silence followed again. Amina pushed herself up and ran to the fallen soldier. She already knew. The wound was clean. Fatal. Rain washed his blood into the soil as if the forest was eager to erase him. For the first time, Amina felt the weight settle deep in her chest. She closed his eyes. "Move," she said, rising quickly. "Now." They advanced faster now, urgency cutting through exhaustion. The forest tightened around them, paths narrowing, terrain rising sharply. Water rushed downhill in shallow floods that soaked everything in their path. Then the rain returned with fury. It crashed down in blinding sheets, wind driving it sideways, thunder cracking so close it felt like the sky splitting open. Trees swayed violently. Branches fell without warning. Visibility dropped to nothing. Amina shouted orders, her voice almost lost in the roar. "Stay close. Use the trees." The ground shifted beneath her feet. A deep, trembling groan rolled through the earth. Before she could react, the hillside gave way. Mud, water, and debris surged forward like a living wave, sweeping soldiers off their feet. Amina was thrown hard against a tree, her breath ripped from her lungs as pain exploded across her ribs. She clung to the trunk as the flood roared past, dragging weapons, packs, and bodies with it. Shouts vanished beneath the sound of moving earth. Then just as suddenly it stopped. The rain fell again in steady sheets as if nothing had happened. Amina slid down the tree, gasping, forcing air back into her chest. Her side burned with every breath, but she pushed through it and stood. "Sound off," she yelled. Answers came back, fewer than before. Some soldiers staggered out of the mud, bleeding, shaken. Others did not respond. Amina's throat tightened, but her voice stayed firm. "We search," she said. Quickly. They found 2 more alive, trapped against roots, coughing up water and mud. One had a broken leg. Another couldn't stop shaking. They found 1 more body. The forest took him quietly. As they regrouped, soaked, injured, and thinning, doubt returned, not whispered this time, but heavy and unspoken. Eyes flicked to Amina, searching for something. "Oh." She wiped rain from her face and stepped forward. "We're not turning back," she said. "Not now. Not like this." Thunder rolled again, closer than ever. "The enemy believes this storm will finish what they started," she continued. "They think we're broken." She met their eyes one by one. "They're wrong." Her words didn't erase the fear. They didn't heal the wounded. But they did something more important. They gave direction. The forest loomed ahead, darker, louder, alive with water and threat. And somewhere beyond it, the enemy waited. The storm no longer felt like weather. It felt intentional. Rain slammed into the forest with renewed violence, turning the air into moving water. Every breath tasted damp and cold. The wounded groaned softly as they were helped forward, each step an effort against mud that clung like hands unwilling to let go. Captain Amina Kade walked at the center now. Her ribs burned with every breath, a sharp reminder of the hillside collapse, but she refused to slow. Pain was a private thing. Leadership was not. The unit was smaller. The gaps were noticeable. No one said the names of the fallen, but they moved with the weight of them pressing down on every step. The forest thickened again, the terrain rising into uneven ridges that forced the soldiers to climb on hands and knees. Water ran down the slopes in fast-moving streams, carving shallow channels that grew deeper by the minute. Amina stopped suddenly. The instinct hit her hard and fast. She raised her fist. Everyone froze. The rain masked sound, but not everything. Beneath it, there was movement ahead, too rhythmic, too controlled to be natural. The enemy wasn't hiding anymore. They were waiting. Amina scanned the ridge through the downpour. Shapes formed and vanished as mist rolled through. High ground. Entrenched positions. Natural cover shaped into defenses. The crossing. This was it. She felt the eyes of her unit on her back again. This time they weren't searching for confidence. They were asking a question without words. Is this where we die? Amina exhaled slowly and turned. We're exposed here, she said. If we rush, they cut us down. She knelt, drawing lines in the mud with her finger, mapping terrain from memory and observation. They expect a straight push. We won't give them one. She pointed toward a narrow ravine half hidden by trees and rushing water. That channel floods fast, but it curves behind their position. We move through it. Quiet. Oh. We let the storm hide us. Pause. It'll be dangerous, she added. The current's strong. Someone could get hurt. No one spoke. Then a voice broke the rain. We're already hurt, one of the soldiers said. Let's finish it. Amina nodded once. They moved. The ravine swallowed them quickly, water rising to knees, then thighs. The current fought them, pulling at legs, trying to drag them under. Weapons were held high. Packs grew heavier by the second. A soldier lost footing and went down hard. Amina grabbed him before the water could claim him, bracing herself against the rock wall as pain flared in her side. Move, she urged. Don't stop. The sound of gunfire erupted above them. The enemy had spotted movement, too late to stop it entirely but early enough to react. Bullets tore into the water, sending up violent splashes. Stone chipped. Someone cried out as a round grazed their shoulder. Amina pushed forward, teeth clenched, forcing her body to obey. They emerged behind the enemy line in chaos, wet, gasping, furious. Amina didn't shout. She raised her rifle and fired. The fight was close now. Brutal. Confined. Rain turned blood into thin red streams that vanished into the earth almost instantly. Orders were shouted, lost, repeated. The forest echoed with short bursts of violence, then swallowed them whole. Amina moved through it like a force shaped by necessity. She dragged wounded soldiers into cover, fired when she had to, shouted warnings when she could. At one point, an enemy soldier lunged from the mist, and she reacted without thought, striking him down before her mind could catch up to her body. Then it happened. The radio crackled violently. Static. Then a voice. Not command. Enemy. They're collapsing. The voice laughed through the interference. Storm's doing our work. Amina ripped the radio free and crushed it into the mud. Her unit was thinning again. Ammo ran low. Fatigue hollowed faces. The wounded cried out despite themselves now, pain and fear breaking through discipline. For the first time since the mission began, Amina felt the edge of something dangerous creeping into her thoughts. What if this is where it ends? Thunder cracked directly overhead, splitting the sky with blinding white light. A massive tree nearby shuddered, then snapped, crashing down only meters away, sending shockwaves through the ground. The forest was coming apart. Amina dropped to one knee, breath ragged, rain blinding her. For a heartbeat, everything narrowed, sound, sight, thought. Then she stood. Her voice rose, raw and unfiltered. Listen to me. The unit turned toward her. This storm is not killing us, she said. This forest is not beating us. Another thunderclap answered her words. We're still standing. That means we still fight. She looked at the faces before her, mud-streaked, exhausted, terrified, unbroken. Follow me. She charged forward. Not because she was fearless, but because stopping meant losing everything. The enemy line broke under the sudden push, surprised by the refusal to fall back, by the sheer will behind the attack. The forest rang with one final surge of violence, then began to quiet again. The rain softened. Just slightly. Amina dropped to her knees when it was over, hands shaking, chest burning, rain mixing with sweat and blood. The crossing was theirs. But the cost lay scattered around them, silent and heavy. She bowed her head just for a moment. The storm had not finished speaking. The rain returned with vengeance. Not as a steady fall, but as violent bursts that crashed down in waves, as if the sky itself refused to let the fight end quietly. Thunder rolled without pause, overlapping, echoing through the forest until direction and distance no longer mattered. Captain Amina Kade forced herself back to her feet. Her legs trembled, threatening to give way, but she ignored them. Around her, the crossing lay torn and scarred. Fallen trees blocked parts of the path. Weapons lay half buried in mud. The wounded were being pulled into what little cover remained. They had taken the ground. But the enemy had not disappeared. Amina knew better than to believe in silence. She checked her remaining troops. Fewer than she wanted. More than she had feared. Faces were hollow now, eyes dulled by exhaustion and loss, but they still looked to her. Always to her. Reposition, she ordered. Defensive arc. We hold. Rain washed over them as they moved, soaking bandages, slicking grips. Ammunition was counted in quiet voices. Magazines were half empty. Hands shook as they were reloaded. Amina felt a sharp stab in her side as she bent to help a wounded soldier into cover. She inhaled through clenched teeth, refusing to show it. The forest shifted again. Footsteps. Multiple. Fast. Contacts. Someone hissed. Amina raised her hand and waited. Let them come closer. Let the storm mask their approach just a little longer. The enemy burst through the trees in a desperate push, shouting, slipping in the mud, firing wildly. They were tired too. Desperate. Driven by the same belief, that if they could break the other side now, the storm would finish the rest. Amina fired in short, controlled bursts. Each shot mattered. Each recoil sent pain through her ribs, but she welcomed it. Pain meant she was still moving. The fight collapsed into chaos again. Visibility vanished. Rain blurred faces into shapes. Friend and enemy separated only by movement and instinct. A soldier went down near Amina, clutching his leg, screaming as blood mixed with water. She dragged him back by his vest, firing over his shoulder with her free hand. "Stay with me," she said, not knowing if he heard her. Thunder exploded overhead, closer than ever before. The ground shuddered violently, and the world tilted as another section of hillside collapsed nearby, sending a wave of mud and debris crashing into the edge of the fight. The forest screamed. Amina was thrown forward, landing hard in the mud. Her vision swam. For a moment she couldn't tell which way was up. A boot struck near her head. She rolled instinctively, raising her rifle. Click. Empty. The enemy soldier froze for half a heartbeat. So did she. Amina surged forward, ramming the butt of her rifle into his chest, knocking him back into the mud. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She moved until the threat stopped moving. When she rose, her hands were shaking violently. She forced them still. The rain began to ease again, as if the storm was finally tiring of the noise. The enemy broke. Not all at once. Not cleanly. They scattered into the forest, retreating uphill, leaving the ground behind them in fragments. Gunfire faded into distant, isolated cracks, then vanished completely. Only the rain remained. Amina stood in the middle of it, chest heaving, rain streaming down her face. Her body felt hollowed out, every movement heavy. She scanned the crossing again and again, waiting for the next attack that never came. Slowly the truth settled in. They had held. The forest grew quieter, the thunder moving farther away. Dawn crept in at the edges of the trees, pale and weak, but real. Amina lowered her weapon at last. She moved through her unit, checking the living, closing the eyes of the dead. Each one felt like a weight added to her spine, bending her lower but never breaking her. When she finally stopped, she stood at the center of the crossing, rainwater pooling around her boots. A soldier approached hesitantly. "Captain," he said. "Command's calling. They say the position's secure. Reinforcements are on the way." Amina nodded. She didn't smile. She looked out at the forest instead. The rain thinned to a soft drizzle, mist rising from the earth like breath leaving a body. The trees stood silent now, witnesses to what had passed through them. The storm had taken its share. But it had not taken her. The rain finally stopped just before sunrise. Not all at once. Not cleanly. It thinned into a mist that drifted through the trees like the forest was exhaling after holding its breath all night. Drops still clung to leaves and branches, falling occasionally with soft, hollow taps, but the storm's fury was gone. Captain Amina Kade stood alone at the crossing. Mud covered her boots. Her uniform was stiff with dried blood and soaked fabric. Every breath pulled sharply against her ribs, and exhaustion pressed down on her shoulders like a physical weight. But she stayed upright, eyes fixed on the quiet forest ahead. Dawn arrived slowly. Light filtered through the canopy in pale beams, revealing what the darkness and rain had hidden. Torn earth, broken branches, shallow pools stained dark where blood had mixed with water. The forest looked wounded, scarred by the night it had endured. So did her unit. The survivors moved carefully now, voices low, movements restrained. The wounded were gathered in the driest ground they could find. Bandages were changed again and again, though there was little left to keep them clean. Pain was constant, but it had settled into something dull and manageable. Loss, however, lingered sharply. Amina walked among them, stopping often, placing a hand on a shoulder, meeting eyes. She didn't offer speeches. She didn't offer comfort she couldn't guarantee. She offered presence. Reinforcements arrived as the sun climbed higher, boots crunching through wet leaves, radios crackling, voices carrying the sharp clarity of those who had not walked through the storm. Medics rushed forward, stretchers unfolded, orders shouted. Amina stepped aside and let them work. Only then did she allow herself to sit. She lowered herself onto a fallen log, hands resting loosely on her knees. For a moment, her body threatened to fold in on itself completely, fatigue crashing down like a delayed wave. She closed her eyes and breathed. Images surfaced uninvited. The soldier swallowed by the trench. The sniper's shot. The hillside collapsing. The faces that would not rise again. She opened her eyes. The forest stood calm now, almost indifferent. Birds began to stir, tentative at first, then braver, their calls threading gently through the quiet. War moved on. The forest remained. A young soldier approached, helmet tucked under his arm. His face was streaked with grime, eyes red with exhaustion and something deeper. "Captain," he said softly. Amina looked up. "They're saying, we wouldn't have made it without you." She studied him for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. "You made it because you didn't quit," she said. "I just showed the direction." He nodded, swallowing hard, then stepped away. Later, as the unit prepared to move out, command officers arrived. Reports were taken. Coordinates were marked. Words like success and secured were spoken carefully, respectfully, as if afraid of sounding careless around the dead. One officer stopped in front of Amina. "You held under impossible conditions," he said. "The storm alone should have broken this operation." Amina looked past him toward the trees. "It almost did," she replied. When they finally left the crossing, the forest reclaimed it quickly. Water flowed back into disturbed ground. Leaves fell where bodies had been. The evidence of battle faded with every passing minute. But something remained. Among the soldiers who followed Captain Amina Kade, doubt was gone forever. They would remember the rain. They would remember the night the forest tried to swallow them whole. And they would remember the captain who stood at the front, soaked and unyielding, refusing to let the storm decide their fate. Long after the forest healed, long after the war moved on, her name would be spoken quietly among troops who faced impossible odds. Not as a legend, but as proof that leadership is not loud, that strength is not the absence of fear, and that even in the heaviest rain, someone must stand tall enough for others to follow. The forest had tested her. The storm had challenged her. Captain Amina Kade had endured them both, and she walked away still standing.